Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Today is a day that people are going to remember, whether they know that now or not. Today is an important day. I just watched the opening of the United States Embassy in Israel in Jerusalem. I watched the whole thing. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to bring up some points that I noticed, some perceptions that I picked up on that I think other people may not have picked up on, and so to better inform all of us, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. But first, cue the intro. Is that cool or what? It says Viking Preparedness on the back. I'm not a secret agent man anymore. Let's get rid of these. All right. Yeah, big day. The United States has opened and dedicated our embassy in Jerusalem. And lots of people spoke. Israelis spoke, Americans spoke, pastors spoke, rabbis spoke. I watched it all, and some interesting things, not in any particular order. One, Pastor Hagee from Cornerstone Church, I think, and somewhere in Tejas, gave, you'll be able to find his prayer on YouTube. He gave on the one hand, politically correct prayer, and on the other hand, a politically incorrect prayer. How can you do both? Well, as a supposed Christian pastor, he did not mention the name Jesus in his prayer. Probably because he didn't want to offend the Jews. And so that was politically correct, right? But politically incorrect, oh my goodness. He was almost at the very end. And everybody before him was speaking, taking great pains for the most part to avoid politicizing it and making it an anti-Islam thing. Okay, and I'll get into that a little bit more too. An anti-terrorist thing, all that stuff. And man, Hagee just called them out, and he called out Iran, and he called out Islamic terrorists, and in his closing prayer. So it's fun to watch. People were like, "Whoo!" Jews and Christians and nuns, they were all like, "Whoo!" in the crowd. So that was kind of cool. Let's understand something about Jerusalem. I do believe it is the Jewish capital, right? I believe deeper than that, it's the Israelite capital, as opposed to Israeli. Another story for another time. It's certainly not an Islamic capital, no matter what they think. And Jerusalem right now is a divided city according to the world, but not the Israelis. And by that, West Jerusalem belongs, and everybody agrees it belongs to Israel. But after a war, and I don't remember which one, Israel captured eastern Jerusalem, which was controlled by Arabs. I think the Jordanians took it once, and then the Israelis came and took it back, and now the Israelis occupy eastern Jerusalem, which is a big sticking point in the Palestinian-Israeli relationship. The Palestinians want all of Jerusalem, but they claim they want eastern Jerusalem back. And the Israelis are like, yeah, probably not going to happen. So there's a lot of tension there with that, right? Our embassy is in West Jerusalem. The Americans who spoke took great pains, almost all of them. And there were 6 or 7 Americans that spoke. I'm sure you'll be able to watch it. I'm on the White House YouTube site. I'm sure in a couple minutes the whole ceremony will be up again for you to watch. I watched it live. But the Americans took great pains to basically say 2 things over and over and over. And one was, we support the status quo with regards to the Temple Mount, meaning the Muslims now control the Temple Mount. They're in charge of it, not the Jews, not the Israelis. And the U.S. took great pains to say, hey, just because we're putting our embassy in Jerusalem doesn't mean we want to change anything like that. The other thing we took great pains to say was, hey, we are not settled on any borders. This moving our embassy doesn't mean this. What they were saying was, we are leaving open for negotiation the status of East Jerusalem. Now, they didn't come out and put it in those words, but they said, you know, hey, this doesn't mean that we've drawn any hard lines anywhere. Over and over and over, we said that. And so they're trying to tell the mostly Palestinians, but also those who support the Palestinians, hey, don't worry, don't get crazy. They even mentioned the Temple Mount by the Arabic name a couple times. We're not taking the Temple Mount from y'all. Don't get all in a frenzy. And two, hey, East Jerusalem, that could still potentially go back to the Palestinians. That's kind of what we were saying. And then you see Netanyahu get up there and talk. And he gave a speech that was full of gratitude to President Trump, full of gratitude to the United States, kind of moving. But he said a couple things in there. He mentioned how the Temple Mount is where the temple was built, where Israel's holy site is. He mentioned that a couple times. Read between the lines there, and what he was saying was, we want the Temple Mount back. Talk about a flashpoint there, but that is what he was saying. If you go back and watch it yourself and watch how he mentions the Temple Mount as many times as he does, and how he says it, he's basically saying the Temple Mount belongs to the Jews, regardless of the fact that Arabs control it now, Islam. The other thing he said very strongly was, Jerusalem, my words for what he said, Jerusalem is the eternal, non-negotiable capital of the Jewish people, of Israelis. And he said, an undivided city, meaning, dude, we're keeping all of Jerusalem. I don't care what those guys say. We're keeping Jerusalem. It's ours. What do I think about that? Boy, if I put this on YouTube, I'd get a bazillion views and bunches of haters out there. I think right now the Israelis control Israel, and I think that is better that they do than anybody else does, quite frankly. I think they are going to get the Temple Mount back. I think Jerusalem is not going to be divided in any kind of peace treaty. I think stuff is fixing to happen. I think the Arabs are going to read the same thing I read in this stuff. And when I say Arabs, I mean Islamic type people all throughout the land. I know Persians are Islamic, but they're not Arabs. I know. I saw a headline on Drudge a couple days ago. I did not open the article. I now kind of wish I did, but not enough to go back and look it up. About some rabbi said, my words again for what he said, but it's close, things are fixing to get biblical. Yeah, I think they are. Ramadan starts pretty soon. I think within 48 hours. 70th year anniversary of Israel today, nation state of. Dedicated the embassy today. Pulled out of the Iranian deal. They still haven't really responded. I guess when Israel did that attack into Syria the other day, they really schwacked a lot of Iranians. Come out of her, my people. I don't know how much time you have. And I got a question for y'all. I was going to do a whole video on this, but I thought it would be selfish. What do y'all know about Maine? Specifically upstate Maine. I have some people that are looking to maybe relocate to Maine, and they sent me a bunch of lands for sale with houses on it, ads. Land's pretty cheap in Maine. Northern Maine. I did note that one of the pieces I looked at today, it was 23 degrees this morning in Maine. Yeah, it's going up to like 86 here today. But man, I was looking at 200 plus acre lots, you know, land, 200 acres with a house and usually outbuildings, and one had 3 houses on it, all for well under $200,000, most around $150,000, somewhere around there. And it looks like it's out there, like out in the boonies. But what I'm kind of interested in anything you have to say that you know, not that you've heard, I don't care what you've heard, I want to know people who know about Maine, is what are their laws like? You know, if I bought 200 acres here in Maine, let's say, could I chop down those trees if I wanted to? Could I build an avocottage if I wanted to? Would people leave me alone like they do here in the Ozarks? You know, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. So what do you know about Maine? Hey, big day today in the world, focused on Jerusalem. Stay tuned, sports fans. I think things might be getting ready to go biblical. All right, come out of her, my people. I'll see you out there.